We escaped from a haunted house, but I think something is wearing my wife's skin. It looks like her, but I don't think May ever left the unhallowed halls of Whitewall House. The children hated our new home from the moment they first laid eyes upon it. We drove along a disused gravel driveway past the dilapidated farm of a long-gone man.
It's too still,
May muttered. My wife's comment unsettled me. Her tone was uncharacteristically somber, which frustrated me, given that our children were already being a pain. I wanted her support. Where was her usual sunny disposition?
This place is creepy, Dad.
Freddie trembled.
I hate agreeing with that idiot, but he's right.
Tilly seconded. Let's hold our verdicts until we step foot inside the house, I said. Things will look better when we've made this place our own. You'll see. But I was wrong. Things worsened. May would frequently wake me in the middle of the night, screeching about a long-armed lady that silently watched her from the corner of our bedroom. And then she said the thing with long limbs started to stalk her during the day, only ever in the house, of course.
We need to leave this place, Carl.
She begged. I just think we should consider the therapy that Dr. Marlowe suggested, I said. We have 2 fully grown children and a newborn baby on our hands. Don't you think the sleepless nights could be to blame? After all, postnatal depression could...
I'm not depressed.
He cried.
Why won't you believe me?
I always believe you, but your mind is playing tricks, I said softly. I just don't believe in haunted houses, May. On the night that we fled Whitewall House, I ate those words. I saw something that I could not and cannot explain. Something that gives me cause to believe my wife never made it out of the house.
Get the children!
May wailed. The sudden request stirred me violently from my sleep, and I rubbed my weary eyes to find my wife in a shaky, upright position. For a split second, I thought I saw a figure by the window, and I screamed. But when my eyes adjusted to the light, I realized it was just the curtain billowing in the breeze. Oh, sorry, I left the window open, I sighed.
No, Carl.
May whispered, pointing at the haunted corner in the room.
It's finally come to take me. Look.
Horrifyingly, when I followed her finger, I saw the figure again, and I realized it hadn't been a trick of the light or my sleepy eyes. A long-necked lady lurked in the dimly lit corner of our room, but the moonlight was sufficient to illuminate her slender, crooked stature and stringy waist-length hair. Yelling in terror, I leapt out of the bed and fumbled with the light switch. It didn't work. The long-necked demon started to walk towards the bed. Get the fuck up! I shrieked to my wife. May clumsily slid across the mattress and I hoisted her up, practically carrying her to the landing. We burst into the kids' shared room and I scooped up baby Jen out of the cot whilst Freddie and Tilly started to wake up.
What's happening?
Tilly sleepily asked.
We're leaving.
May ordered. Go
Straight to the car.
But
Freddie began. Do as your mother says, I barked. Freddie and Tilly are good kids. On that night, they must have been terrified out of their minds, but they saw that their parents felt the same. The 5 of us were in a tightly knitted huddle, moving through the darkened house. None of the light switches worked, so I asked Freddie to illuminate the way with my phone. My hands were full of gin.
where's Mom?
Tilly suddenly shrieked. I turned my head. May had been pressed against my side, but she had vanished without a sound. Wait in the car, I said, passing the baby to my son. Look after both of your little sisters, Freddie. Keys are in my coat pocket.
Where are you going?
I'm going to find your mother, I replied. Wait in the car. As the children scurried downstairs, I heard the door creaking at the end of the hallway, creeping along the near lightless hallway. I squinted at the crack between the ajar door and the frame. I found myself silently screaming as I locked eyes with the long-necked lady. It smiled at me, a toothy, almost human smile on a shadowy corpse-like face. Head hung to the side, struggling to stay upright on such an obscenely long neck.
Carl!
May cried. I spun to see my wife standing behind me on the landing, her face strewn with tears, and when I turned back to the ajar door at the end of the landing, the long-necked lady entity had disappeared. I didn't ask questions, I simply seized May's hands and hurried the 2 of us downstairs and followed our children to the car. As I twisted the key in the ignition and the engine roared to life, I half expected to see our spectral stalker in the open doorway of our lifeless home. Nothing. The house sat soundlessly in the dark as I drove down the driveway, putting Whitewall House in the rearview mirror for good. And that was truly what I believed as we settled down at a nearby hotel for the evening. It was over. But something startled me awake. May was breathing heavily on my neck in bed. Slow, heavy, guttural breathing. Completely unlike herself. I rolled over, preparing to tell her to stop snoring. She wasn't snoring. She was lying there wide awake, staring at me. and she wore the most dreadful smile, the tips of her lips curled upwards, nearly reaching her piercing eyes. The worst part is I tried to scream, but I couldn't. Skin covered my mouth. May inhaled and exhaled heavily, placing her index finger on my mouthless face. With an unwavering smile, she shushed me, and then I found myself unwillingly drifting back to sleep. When I woke up this morning, my lips had returned and my children were sleeping safely in their beds. That might have been a bad dream, I considered. I looked at May. Her eyes were closed, but her lips started to bend upwards in that ghastly grin. I could no longer deny the truth. The thing next to me was not May. That brings us to the present. I think I have to get my children out of here and go back to Whitewall House.
12 hours later.
Whitewall House looked different this afternoon. 12 hours had passed and yet the property appeared ruinous, worse than 2 months prior to when we first pulled onto the driveway. My knees knocked together as I inched through the open front door. Silence greeted me, but that wasn't a comfort. I thought of May's comment when we first arrived. It's too still. May? I called. I crept up the creaking stairs, grateful for the sunlight that poured through the windows, though the house still terrified me. I finally saw what my wife and children had seen for weeks. The true malice hidden in those walls. And then I heard crying from the room at the end of the upstairs landing, our bedroom. I sprinted towards it, pushing the door open to find a sight that stilled my shaking body. May, I whispered. She was sitting on the edge of our bed, face drenched in tears, and she looked up at me.
You came back.
She said, sniffling. My weary wife rushed to her feet, and we embraced for a little while, bawling into each other's shoulders. I felt a deep, unyielding guilt. Couldn't believe I'd left her here all night. I'm sorry, I sobbed. It tricked me. I thought it...
Where are our children?
May anxiously interjected. They're with Rachel. They're safe. Come on, let's get out of here, I said, wrapping my arm around her. My wife gently squeezed my hand and shook her head. Looking up at me, she beamed, but it was a sad smile. Her sorrow filled me with dreadful emptiness.
Can't,
May replied. And before I could reply, the door to the guest room at the far end of the landing, the one which had revealed the long-necked lady the night before, swung open on its own accord. My wife stood still. She was shivering at the very side of the guest room. I sensed that she wanted me to go alone, so I motioned for her to stay in the bedroom. As I walked across the landing, I trembled, fearing the thing with the slender curved neck and the lopsided head. I braced for whatever fate the entity would deal. I didn't find the sickly, shadowy demon in the guest room. I found something far more horrifying.
I'm sorry,
She cried, standing behind me. But she wasn't standing behind me. She was lying on the carpet in the guest room, snapped into a twisted shape with a petrified look on her lifeless face. By the looks of it, she looked like she died hours before I arrived there, alone. No, I croaked, falling to my knees in tears.
I didn't know whether you'd believe me.
She sobbed.
Carl, I need you to.
Did it happen whilst I was helping the children downstairs? I saw it in the doorway, I murmured. The spectral form of my wife placed her hands on my shoulders, consoling me as I mourned her. There's something indescribably terrifying about having a conversation with someone whose corpse is lying before you,
Carl,
May said softly.
I need you to listen to me. We have to protect our family. Where's the lady?
At the hotel, I replied. But the kids are safe. They're miles away.
She's not at the hotel.
May whimpered. What? I asked.
She's not at the hotel, May
Repeated.
That thing could only leave this place by latching on to someone.
You? I said. May shook her head tearily.
No, sweetheart. You. Where you go, it goes.
There was a sudden sound of the door slamming and the light outside of the windows dimmed, as if a cloud were hanging heavily over our house.
She's here,
May whispered, gripping my arm.
She took my necklace, the one you gave me. That's how she assumed my form. You need to take it back so you can trap her here.
A moan sounded from the lobby. May gripped me tightly.
I can't stay. She's shutting me out.
I turned to face my wife, but her spectral form had vanished. I was kneeling on the floor beside her cold, decaying corpse in a near lightless white-wall house. I rose to my feet and listened to the steps ascending the staircase. Then I saw the thing that was pretending to be my wife. It smiled at me and hissed.
What have you found, sweetheart?
The necklace sporting a pair of initials M and C swung tantalizing on May's soft skin. I had to remind myself that it wasn't her. It was a trick, a demon's deceit. And I also knew that it wouldn't take long for the lady, as May called her, to infer my intentions. I lunged toward the abomination and grasped the necklace in my hand, curling my fingers around it. The smile on the lady's face faded, and she slowly shook her head at me.
I wouldn't do that.
She hissed. But the thing didn't raise a hand. It didn't try to stop me. I wrenched the necklace from the frightful thing, and then I shoved it out of the way, rushing down the stairs to the lobby. The front door slammed shut, enclosing me in the darkened space, and I spun around to find that my wife's doppelganger was gone. I was looking at a scarcely visible form of the lady, long neck, corpse-like and inhuman. Its lopsided head bounced against its shoulder, and I shrieked. I stared at the Reaper's unholy face as its janky body clomped down the stairs. I reached the bottom of the stairs and I pressed my back against the front door, fumbling with the lock that wouldn't budge.
Run!
The voice screamed. May. Her ghostly hand rose from the floorboards, clutching the lady's slender ankle and rooting it to the ground. The demon screeched, swiping a hand towards me as I slithered to the lounge. It continued to moan and shriek, realizing I was about to slip away, as I picked up a dining chair and hurled it at the living room window. The glass pane shattered and I hauled my body through the window frame, landing on the driveway. I didn't look back. I hopped in my car and drove away from Whitewall House for the last time.